agent of Red China. He is the key to a lot of what's happened in Chinagate. He was the Riyadh's man in the Clinton administration. He made more than 400 calls to various elements of their empire while he was working in his Commerce Department office. He made heaven only knows how many calls from a safe house located nearby. He received at least 109 classified briefings dealing with China, after which on many occasions he would literally go to the next room and give a briefing to the Red Chinese ambassador. He helped to eviscerate export controls on much of our high-tech hardware and software, especially the encryption technology, and he played the key role in coordinating this divine orchestration of threads that Sun Tzu referred to, working with all the elements of the Chinagate espionage and bribery network to bring about Red China's objectives. It's interesting, he was deposed by Judicial Watch in mid-April. Judicial Watch, of course, is the legal watchdog group that has done a lot of the spade work in uncovering the Chinagate scandal. Mr. Wang invoked the Fifth Amendment 419 times. I don't know if he did so when he was asked if his name was John Wang, but he invoked the Fifth Amendment when he was dealing with questions he had previously answered under oath, which means he doesn't have a Fifth Amendment immunity. If you've already answered questions under oath, you can't change your mind once you've agreed to cooperate. It will be interesting to see if anybody in the so-called Justice Department sees fit to make an issue of this. Yalin Charlie Tree is another of the key rogues in this whole parcel of rogues I'm referring to. He is a member of a Red Chinese criminal syndicate called the Four Seas Triad. One of the oaths of the Four Seas Triad refers to what happens if you are caught. If you're caught, you go to jail. You do not betray your co-conspirators or you will be killed. That is an oath that was sworn by Yalin Charlie Tree. After his role in the Chinagate scandal was uncovered, he fled to China. He wasn't difficult to find. ABC News tracked him down and interviewed him on camera. But he proved to be too elusive for the Justice Department to go over and interview him or subpoena him. But he returned of his own initiative in early 1998 and surrendered himself to authorities, and he is being faithful to the oath he swore. He gave at least $220,000 to the re-election effort of Bill Clinton, $460,000 to the Clinton Legal Defense Trust, all of which came from illegal Asian sources. And in March of 1996, when he made this huge donation to Mr. Clinton's Legal Defense Trust, he hand-delivered for delivery to Bill Clinton a letter that originated in Red China, essentially warning the U.S. not to intervene in China's so-called internal affairs when Red China was acting in a menacing fashion toward Taiwan. And as we have seen, Mr. Clinton has adapted our policy accordingly. Yalin Charlie Tree is one of the major reasons why Costco had access to Bill Clinton. And we'll talk a little bit about Costco once again in just a second, having to do with Johnny Chung's role. One of the most unfortunate things here, one of the most degrading elements of the Chinagate scandal is the fact that Charlie Tree is a close comrade of another gangster by the name of Ng Lap Sung. Ng Lap Sung is a mobster who's headquartered in Macau, which is a province, just a Portuguese colony that will be turned over to Red China this year in 1999. Ng Lap Sung wired over $1 million to bank accounts controlled by Charlie Tree. He also brought in huge briefcases full of cash for the purpose of being given to the Clinton administration and various democratic causes. Ng Lap Sung is very tight with China's Ministry of State Security, the MSS, which is their equivalent of the KGB. His primary occupation is vice. He is a major drug lord. He is also one of the major pimps on Macau. He runs a huge prostitution ring. And by virtue, if you can use the word virtue in this type of a context, of his contributions to Mr. Clinton's re-election campaign, Ng Lap Sung visited the White House at least 15 times. Ted Siong is another major player in the vice empire of Ng Lap Sung. He's an Indonesian who was raised by ethnic Chinese in Indonesia. He has a passport from Belize. He's rootless, he's stateless, he's completely disreputable. And he donated about $400,000 to Mr. Clinton's re-election campaign. He has been identified as an agent of Red China. According to the Thompson Committee report, quote, Siong worked on behalf of the Chinese government and regularly communicated with the Red Chinese embassy and consular officials at various locations in the United States, He traveled to Beijing frequently, where he reported to and was briefed by Chinese Communist Party officials. And that brings us to Johnny Chung. The case of Johnny Chung is, I think, the most interesting of all the cases we've discussed so far, the people involved as conduits of Red China's money. Johnny Chung, about a year ago, agreed to a plea bargain with federal investigators. He admitted to receiving at least $300,000 from Red China's military and giving at least $100,000 to the Bill Clinton re-election effort in 1996. Of course, Johnny Chung is epigrammatically famous for what should have been the epitaph of the Clinton administration. I see the White House as like a subway. You have to put coins in to open the gates. Johnny Chung brokered personal meetings between Bill Clinton and Lieutenant Colonel Liu Chaoying of the so-called People's Liberation Army. Liu Chaoying is involved in aerospace acquisition for Red China's army, missile technology, satellite technology, all the types of things that Bill Clinton has arranged to be transferred to Red China. It was Johnny Chung who met 3 times with General Ji Shangde of the Red Chinese military intelligence. And he was informed in those meetings, according to a fascinating article that appeared in the April 4th, 1999 Los Angeles Times. He was told, Johnny Chung was, by General Ji, that numerous other people were involved as conduits, funneling money into Bill Clinton's re-election effort. In April of 1998, after Chung began to cooperate with the feds, he was visited by a businessman from China. This is what the Los Angeles Times reported, quote, "In a conversation conducted in Chinese, the businessman offered Chung a carrot and a stick, advising him to keep silent about his contacts with General Ji. In return, Chung would receive funds sufficient to live very comfortably. But the businessman suggested that Chung and his family could have safety concerns if the offer were ignored. Furthermore, the businessman advised Chung to go to jail if necessary, assuring Chung that friends in high places would support him. The businessman even suggested that Chung could expect to be pardoned by the president." That's a remarkable promise coming from the head of Red China's military intelligence. That he could count upon, that is to say that Chung could count upon the intervention of friends in high places and the possible intervention by the President of the United States on his behalf. How confident is Red China that they have bought and paid for Bill Clinton? I would contend that that illustrates a shockingly high level of confidence. Well, in summer of 1998, while Mr. Clinton was groveling his way through China, a hit squad arrived in California searching out Johnny Chung and his family. At one point, the FBI had dispatched 40 agents to keep Johnny Chung, his wife, and his 3 children under constant surveillance. And heaven only knows where they are to this day. When you are involved in a criminal syndicate like the mafia, if you turn on the mafia, then you are fair game for a contract. To this day, there are people who have gone into the underground after cooperating with federal investigations into the mafia who still live in the witness protection program. I contend that Red China's intelligence assets are much more ruthless and much better organized than the mafia, and they have much more influence with Bill Clinton's administration. One of the things that we need to understand in terms of the extent to which Red Chinese infiltration is going on is that one of the major fundraisers, one of the major elements of the fundraising network that funneled these illegal funds into the Bill Clinton campaign is involved in importing talent for Red China. That individual is named Maria Shaw, and she is a longtime associate of Al Gore. They have a relationship that goes back to 1989. She was indicted by a U.S. federal court in 1998 for, quote, knowingly and willfully conspiring to defraud the U.S. government in matters of immigration and campaign finance. Now, the Democratic minority contribution to the Thompson Committee's report in the Senate said the following thing about Maria Shaw, quote, "The committee received non-public information connecting some activities she undertook while an immigration consultant in the state of California in the early to mid-1990s to Chinese government officials." In other words, she was involved as an immigration consultant helping Red China do what? Circumvent the regularly established and constituted avenues for immigration. She was bringing people into this country in ways that appeared to be at least shady and perhaps outright illegal. Now, why would she be doing this? She would be doing this, I contend, in order to bring in manpower of the sort, perhaps, that composed the hit squad that went after Johnny Chung. They have people who are in key positions who have access to the highest levels of our government. Maria Shaw is very tight with Al Gore. She put together a group of shady Asian characters in 1989 for the purpose of promoting Al Gore's presidential prospects. Bill Clinton was talent scouted by Red China perhaps in the mid-1980s when Yalin Charlie Tree, this triad agent, the sleeper agent for Beijing, became a very good friend of Bill Clinton's in Little Rock. But Al Gore was talent spotted in 1989, no later than 1989, when he and Maria Shaw got very, very close. Many of you remember the spectacle of the Sailai Buddhist temple fundraiser that Al Gore, the smartest man in the universe, the inventor of the internet, didn't know was a fundraiser, okay? It was Maria Shaw who organized that event and provided the money. This is something that is very important, and by way of bringing a close to this discussion, I wish to emphasize it. What should we do, and what is to be remembered, and what are the key points that we have to hit when we're discussing this with other people? The first and most important point I would bring up with respect to Maria Shaw and the future of the investigation is it's not just Bill Clinton. Al Gore is just as deeply involved, and there are other people who are probably just as deeply compromised as either of those two. Al Gore, once again, was the bag man for the Sailai Temple caper and for other enterprises. We remember how Bill Clinton developed a fetish over the meaning of specific words. Depends upon what the meaning of the word is, was one of the things that we heard quite a bit regarding Mr. Clinton's perjurious testimony. We've heard Al Gore talk about how there's no controlling legal authority for certain types of illegal campaign fundraising activities. That's something we should rehearse to people, is that there is a controlling legal authority when you're talking about acting as a conduit for illegal campaign contributions that amount to bribes from a hostile foreign power. The second point I'd like to make in closing, don't let the Republican Party use Chinagate as an applause line. Too often we have seen how Republican politicians will thoughtfully furrow their brow and utter indignant sound bites and do nothing. We cannot allow that to happen with Chinagate. It is literally a matter of life and death. We should hold Senator Inhofe accountable for saying that. We should tell Senator Inhofe, act as if your words mean something to you. And whenever we hear a Republican politician, they are the majority party right now in the Congress, venting wrath and outrage over what has gone on in the course of Chinagate, we should ask, what are you going to do about it? Will you simply use this as a pitch in your direct mail fundraising, or do you intend to do something materially to improve our circumstance? Don't let them get away with giving us applause lines and then very carefully sweeping it under a very large and bulging rug. Another point I would make is that this would be a good single issue if you're looking for reasons to vote against an incumbent. I wouldn't make what a challenger says about Chinagate to be the single issue upon which I would vote for him, but if you become convinced that your incumbent congressman or senator is somebody who cannot bring himself to take an assertive position on the issue of treason, you've got no reason to vote for him. And you should help people understand that as well. One of the things I would recommend by way of action is to buy and to make available to your friends this book, Year of the Rat, by two very capable congressional investigators, Edward Timberlake and William C. Triplett. It is a tremendously useful volume, and it contains a lot of information, in many instances similar to what I've said this evening. Some of what I have said has been taken from this book. It duplicates a lot of the material that the New American has been putting out since late 1996. This is not an enterprise in which we should be jealous for taking credit. We simply have to do the tough work involved in helping the public understand exactly how serious our situation is. I would also commend to you the value